Good morning. I'm Dr. Saujanya, Assistant Professor, Department of General Medicine. Today, my topic discussion is acute hepatitis. Definition of acute hepatitis is acute liver insult, acute parenchymal liver damage, which is caused by many agents, which are categorized as viral and non-viral causes. This term implies inflammation of the liver, which is characterized by presence of the inflammatory cells in the tissue of the liver. Most of the times, this acute hepatitis is self-limiting on its own. And in some types, it can progress to chronicity, which can develop scarring of the liver. If the symptoms are present for less than 6 months, if the presentation is for less than 6 months, then it is called as acute hepatitis. If the presentation is lasting for more than 6 months, then it is called chronic. Causes can be categorized as viral and non-viral causes. Viral causes are the most important causes. In this, we have hepatitis viruses A, E, B, C types, and herpes simplex virus, CMV virus, Epstein-Barr virus. And non-viral causes, most important causes, alcohol and ingestion of mushrooms, which consists of this toxin, Amanita toxin, and drugs like paracetamol, and ATT drugs like isoniazid, and the anesthetic agents like halothane. All these are toxic to liver. When do you suspect acute hepatitis? The patient is presenting to you with non-specific symptoms of fever, icterus, pain in the right hypochondrium, and lab present with transaminitis, raised SGOT, SGPT levels, then you should suspect this hepatitis B. All these virus illnesses, they have similar clinical and pathological features, and most of them, mostly their presentation can be asymptomatic also. And all these different viruses, they differ in their tendency to cause chronic infections. Out of all these viruses, A, B, C, D, E, highest chance to develop chronic viral hepatitis is for hepatitis C. And for hepatitis B, if the patient acquires it during this if via perinatal transmission, the child acquires, then chances are more than 90% to develop chronicity. Hepatitis A never shows this chronic picture. Hepatitis D, 2% chances if it is co-infected with hepatitis B. Clinical features, there will be non-specific prodromal illness. Even before clinical presentation with these non-specific symptoms, and even before rise of these aminotransferases, there can be viral shedding of these viral particles. There can be viral shedding 2 to 3 weeks prior to the onset of symptoms, and also elevation of the enzymes. So, high chances of infectivity. These non-specific symptoms include headache, myalgias, arthralgias, nausea, and anorexias. Vomiting and abdominal discomfort may also be present. And some patients, they show this icterus. This is usually seen, it is first detected in the sclera of the eye, because the sclera has high content of this elastin, which binds to the bilirubin. So it is first detected here. Even much earlier, it can be seen in the frenulum also, like tongue frenulum also it is seen. On examination of these patients, as the liver is having inflammation, it can be tender and it is enlarged. There can be mild splenomegaly and cervical lymphadenopathy. Symptoms, they rarely last more than 3 to 6 weeks. Usually, these viral illnesses are self-limiting. These are MCQs based bits, statements. Most common cause of acute viral hepatitis is hepatitis E. Most common cause of fulminant hepatic failure is D. But if they ask you most common cause of fulminant hepatic failure in pregnancy, then answer should be hepatitis E. Coming to investigations of viral hepatitis, we do these LFTs. We find elevation of these transaminases. SGOT and SGPT are increased and the ratio will be less than 2. If it is more than 2, then you should think in terms of alcoholic liver disease, because there will be less production of SGPT in alcoholics due to deficiency of B complex, and there will be increased plasma bilirubin. There is prolongation of the PT. When it comes to this coagulation profile, in acute hepatitis, bleeding time is normal in both acute and chronic, because bleeding time, it depends upon platelets. As the platelets are in normal count, BT is not affected. Coming to PT and APTT, in acute hepatitis, PT is prolonged, APTT is normal. Why is PT prolonged? Because prothrombin time, here the half-life of factor 7 is very less. So whenever there is acute insult to the liver, this is first to be elevated. In chronic hepatitis, both PT and APTT are elevated because all the clotting factors in our body are synthesized in the liver except factor 8 and factor 7. I'm sorry, factor 8 and factor 4. This factor 8, von Willebrand factor, is synthesized in the endothelium of the blood vessels. You also check your WBC count. WBC is usually normal with relative lymphocytosis. You go for serological tests. And management, most of these patients, they don't need hospital admission. They can be managed in OP basis. But for these patients, you should avoid sedatives and narcotics because they're metabolized in the liver. No specific diet. They can take normal diet. And alcohol should be strictly avoided during this acute phase when there is liver damage. And if there are any elective surgeries, better we postpone them, because due to the anesthetic agents which are used during surgeries, there can be high risk of post-op liver failure. So we should defer any elective surgeries. Most of these viral hepatitis, they don't need liver transplantation. It is very rarely indicated if the viral hepatitis ends up in fulminant hepatitis. Coming to individual viruses, first we discuss hepatitis A, is RNA virus. Age preference for hepatitis A and E is similar. Usually children and young adults are affected, and the transmission is also same, fecal-oral route. So as the transmission is fecal-oral route, we usually find this infection in people living in crowded places, in slum areas. Incubation period is on an average 30 days. It ranges from 15 to 45 days. And it always has acute presentation only. It never turns into chronic condition. It belongs to Picorna group of enteroviruses. Transmission is fecal-oral route. And I already told you all these viral hepatitis, even before the onset of clinical picture, virus is excreted in feces 2 to 3 weeks before. And after appearance of the symptoms, for 2 more weeks, it is shed in the feces. 30% of the adults, they can have serological evidence of the past infection even without any history of jaundice in their childhood also. I told you most commonly it is seen in overcrowded and poor sanitation slum areas. Hepatitis A never shows chronicity. And for diagnosis, antibodies, anti-HIV antibodies are important for diagnosis. IgM variety is diagnostic. IgG has no diagnostic value, it just indicates immunity to HIV. And these titers fall low within 3 months of recovery. In this image, I wanted to show that this fecal shedding of the HIV virus, hepatitis A, is 2 to 3 weeks before the onset of symptoms and enzyme elevation. How do you manage? As the transmission is fecal-oral route, first we need to improve the social conditions. We need to improve this overcrowding and sanitary. We need to take proper sanitation measures. Open defecation should be avoided. Active immunization with inactivated virus vaccine can be done. And immunization with serum immunoglobulins. When can you give immunoglobulins? If there is an outbreak in outbreak of this hepatitis A virus, especially in schools and nurseries, if there is an outbreak, you can give the serum immunoglobulins, immune serum globulins. And also, if there is any hepatitis A virus infected patients, close contacts to that patient can be given these immunoglobulins, or if there are any close contacts, especially elders with major disease, or if there are pregnant women, even then you can give this serum immunoglobulins. And for travelers traveling to these particular endemic areas, they can be protected by vaccination. And hepatitis A, it is usually self-limiting. It rarely causes serious or life-threatening disease. Acute liver failure is rare. It is about 0.1%. Chronic infection never occurs. And there is no role of antiviral drugs for this infection. It is completely supportive treatment, giving bed rest, giving proper fluids, and infection subsides by itself. Coming to the next virus, hepatitis B. This is one of the important virus because there is a lot to read regarding its structure, its serology, and how to diagnose at what stage. Incubation period for this hepatitis B virus is 30 to 180 days. Average is around 60 to 90 days, that is 2 to 3 months. Onset is insidious or acute. Usually the age preferred individuals are young adults, because these young adults, they have this unprotected sexual intercourse, and they go for these percutaneous IV drug abusers. So these young adults are mostly affected with hepatitis B. And babies and toddlers, they can also be victims of this infection if they acquire it from their mothers. That is perinatal transmission. And individuals who acquire infection via perinatal transmission, they have 90% chances to develop into chronic form. And if you get this infection by a needle prick injury, then the chances are 30%. Hepatitis B particle means structure. It is a double shell structure. It consists of DNA, and outermost it has hepatitis B surface antigens, also called as Australian antigen, and innermost you have the core antigens. These core antigens, they are never seen in the bloodstream. Only antibodies to the core antigens are found in the bloodstream. The HBC antigen is never found in the bloodstream. There is an enzyme called as DNA polymerase. This enzyme is required for viral replication. And there is an antigen called as HBE antigen. This antigen is responsible for viral replication. So whenever there are high titers of HBE antigen, then you can tell that there is high viral replication in that patient. But there is a variety called as pre-core mutant. This is not found in India. This is usually found in Russia, in middle Russia, in those European countries it is found. Actually, this is dangerous. This pre-core mutant, it doesn't have HBE antigen, so you cannot detect it in the blood. So you cannot tell whether virus is replicating inside the person or not. So you cannot take any protective measures. So this hepatitis B can have its aggressive form in those patients who are having pre-core mutants. So pre-core mutant is a form of hepatitis B which doesn't have this HBE antigen, so you cannot measure its replication. This is the image of DN particle. I already told you it's a double shell structure, 42 nanometers in diameter. The outermost surface is HBS AG, and the innermost is the core antigen. These are MCQs. Three important MCQs are: in India, most common cause of chronic liver disease is hepatitis B. Most common cause of hepatocellular carcinoma is also hepatitis B, and most common cause of transfusion associated hepatitis is also hepatitis B. Whereas in Western world, it is hepatitis C, most common cause of chronic liver disease. 1/3 of the world's population, they're infected, they have the serological evidence of hepatitis B. Most of the times this acute infection is asymptomatic. Hepatitis B, I already told you, vertical transmission has highest risk for ongoing chronic infection. If it is chronic, then the patient can develop scarring of the liver due to activation of the stellate cells which are present in the liver in the space of disease. And after cirrhosis, patient can develop hepatocellular carcinoma also. There is a one more antigen called as HBx antigen. We know HBS, HBC and HBe antigen, but there is a new antigen called as HBx antigen. This X antigen, it inhibits CD95. So it inhibits apoptosis. When the apoptosis is inhibited, the cells proliferate irregularly. They'll not have any check. So patients with hepatitis B virus containing HBx antigen, they have higher chances of developing hepatocellular carcinoma. This can be given as an MCQ. This is a recent addition. And chronic hepatitis, it usually takes some decades after infection with hepatitis B virus. The virus actually is not directly cytotoxic. The immune response which is developed to the viral antigens is cytotoxic. That is why after infection with hepatitis B, there will be a phase called as immune tolerant phase, where patient will be having lots of high viral loads of this virus, but there will be very little hepatocellular damage. So what I want to tell is that virus is not directly toxic to the cell, rather the immune response to the viral antigens, they cause damage to the liver. This is the image I want to show is that the first marker which we can see during in hepatitis B infected individuals is the HBs antigen will first appear. This will present, after incubation period of 2 to 4 weeks, disappear. After 3 to 6 weeks, it levels disappear. And again, after 4 weeks, that is from 28 weeks, antibodies to the surface antigen will develop. So after disappearance of this surface antigen and development of antibodies to the surface antigen, there is a gap of around 4 weeks. This is called as gap period or window period. So at this time, we'll not have any evidence of surface antigen or its antibody. So how you will detect? How do you reveal? How do you want to pick out that the patient is having acute hepatitis B? For this, we need to check antibodies against the core antigen. So during this window period, for diagnosis, antibodies to the core antigen, they play a very important role. And these core antigens are initially of IgM type. Later, after disappearance, we get this IgG type. And HBeAg, they during replication phase, initially, their levels will be high, but later when the patient starts to cure himself, the antibodies to HBe antigen appear. This slide I already discussed. Active infection is indicated by hepatitis surface antigen. So we know if HBsAg is positive, we know the patient is having active infection. But whether the patient is having acute hepatitis B or chronic hepatitis B, how we will know? For this, we need to check for antibodies to the core antigen. If there are antibodies to the core antigen present IgG variant, then it is some chronic type. Sir, idedo kadirindi. Okay, sir. You can continue, sir. Okay. So, HBsAg, if it is positive for a patient, you should check whether the patient is having acute or chronic. For that, to differentiate acute or chronic, you need to check whether patient is having IgM variety of antibodies to core antigen or IgG variety. If IgM variety is present, then you can say patient is having acute hepatitis. If IgG variety is present, then you can say patient is having chronic type. Yes, please hold on. కంటిన్యూ అవుతుందో లేదో ఒకసారి చూడరా. this usually this surface antigen will be present in the blood for 3 to 4 weeks. But if it is persisting for more than 6 months, then you should think of chronic hepatitis B. If there are antibodies to the surface antigen, then there can be either a previous infection or previous vaccination. How do we differentiate previous infection and previous vaccination? In this case, if there is a previous infection, then there will be presence of antibodies to the core antigen. For previous vaccination, there will not be antibodies to the core antigen. I told you HBC antigen is never found in the blood. And in the window period, the thing which helps us for diagnosis is IgM variety of antibodies to the core. And the marker for viral replication is E antigen, HBE. I told you in pre-core mutant types, this HBE antigen is absent. So the pre-core mutant variety of hepatitis B is very aggressive and it can lead to fulminant hepatitis and a death of the individual. And you can also check for viral loads. You check it with PCR. If the copies, viral load copies are more than 10 to the power 5 per ml, then it indicates active viral replication. Less than 10 to the power 5, it indicates low viral replication. And by genotyping, you can also know different genotypes. Why do we need to do this genotyping? Because certain types like genotype A, it responds well to pegylated interferons when compared to other genotypes like C and D. So genotyping is necessary so that you can tell whether patient responds to certain drugs or not. Entecavir and tenofovir are the drug of choice for acute hepatitis B. Management for acute hepatitis, like there are high viral loads and the virus is replicating, then you go for antiviral. Otherwise, we usually give supportive management for acute hepatitis B. Because most of the time patient recovers and only in less than 1% there can be acute liver failure. And remember, in acute hepatitis B, 90% recovery is the rule. Whereas hepatitis C, 90% chronicity is the rule. 90 to 95% full recovery occurs, and the remaining 5 to 10% they can develop chronic infection. Already discussed, infection passing from mother to child at birth leads to chronic infection in the child in 90% cases, and recovery is rare in them. Chronic infection is common if the patient is having immunodeficiency like HIV infection, and in them fulminant hepatic failure can occur. Combined hepatitis B and hepatitis D virus causes more aggressive disease. Hepatitis D always requires B virus. So if they're both combined in the patient, then disease will be more aggressive. How can we prevent hepatitis B? By preventing this IV drug abuse and by having safer sexual practices, and also preventing this vertical transmission from mother to child. If a female has hepatitis B acute infection, she can pass this to the child at the time of delivery, at the time of childbirth. So immediately after the child is born, you can give immunoglobulins, at least maximum within 12 hours you should give, and the child should be vaccinated with 3 doses of this hepatitis B vaccine at the time of birth, at 6 weeks, and 10 or 14 weeks, you can vaccinate that child. And again, you should check the status after 12 months of the birth, that is at the time of first birth. And for us, for adults, we can give this hepatitis B vaccine. It can produce active immunization in about 95% of normal individuals. And this is ineffective if the patient is already infected with this hepatitis B. Passive immunization with the immunoglobulins can be given. Whenever there is needle stick injury, there is 30% chances of infection, whereas for HIV, it is very less. It will be in points, around 0.8 or something. So these immunoglobulins, whenever after exposure to this needle stick injury, within 48 hours, you should give this immunoglobulins and also start vaccination. Co-infection with HIV. If a HIV infected individual has a concurrent HBV infection, then the morbidity and mortality is very high. Why is it so? Because in HIV, there is immunosuppression. This immunosuppression can lead to loss of anti-HBs antibodies. So whenever there is loss of anti-HBs antibodies, there can be reactivation of the infection and a poorer antibody response to the HBV vaccination. So there will be faster progression to chronic infection and the patient is at a greater risk to develop cirrhosis and hepatocellular carcinoma. So co-infection with HIV carries high risk of morbidity and mortality compared to the infection alone. Hepatitis D. This age preference and transmission is similar to that of hepatitis B. Incubation period is 30 to 180 days and onset is insidious or acute. This is RNA defective virus, so it doesn't have any independent existence. This D virus always requires B for its replication. Investigations. Anti-HDV antibodies can be used for detecting the acute infection. This delta antigen, it only transiently it is present in blood, so we take these antibodies. These antibodies, they disappear within 2 months, but can persist in some patients. For hepatitis D, effective management of hepatitis B will prevent hepatitis D. So, if you manage B, then you can automatically treat hepatitis D also. And you give supportive treatment until the patient recovers. Hepatitis C. I told you hepatitis C, 90% chronicity is the rule. For hepatitis B, 90% recovery is the rule. So for hepatitis B patients, we don't start antivirals. Okay, initially we treat them symptomatically only, but later if the patient is developing chronic form and if the viral loads are high and if the replication of the virus is also high, then we start antivirals. But for hepatitis C, as 90% chances of chronicity, why do we need to wait until the patient is developing signs of liver failure? So whenever you are suspecting hepatitis C, we should immediately check RNA levels by PCR. They are positive. There are no cutoff like RNA should be this level, then only you can start antivirals. No, there is no cutoff. You directly do PCR RNA. If they are positive for hepatitis C virus, immediately you should start antivirals. Ledipsavir is the treatment of choice for drug of choice for hepatitis C. So picking up the patients of hepatitis C in the early stages of the disease can save lives. So for this, we are not taking any cutoffs for PCR RNA. Immediately you find even a single particle, you should start treatment because 90% chances of chronicity. And incubation period is 15 to 160 days, average is 15 days. Any age group individuals can be affected. Transmission is percutaneous, IV drug abuses and with blood transfusions. Perinatal and sexual transmission also common. It's a RNA virus. Acute symptomatic with hepatitis C is rare. Most of the patients, they don't even remember when they are infected. They're not even aware of when they're infected. Only in course of time, you can tell that patient had been infected with this hepatitis C virus. There is no active or passive protection against the hepatitis C virus. I told you, you should not rely on these antibodies or antigens. You should directly check for the RNA levels. Hepatitis C virus RNA is the first one to be detected. Okay, as early as even after 2 to 4 weeks of infection, you can find this in the blood. But for antibodies to develop, it takes around 6 to 12 weeks. It's a long time. So you should not check those antibodies. Our main goal is to check RNA only. It takes 6 to 12 weeks for antibodies to appear in the blood following acute infection. Hepatitis C RNA can be identified as early as 2 to 4 weeks. Anti-HCV antibodies, they persist in the serum even after viral clearance. HCV RNA is the first detectable agent even before the appearance of ALT elevation or antibody of virus. In this image, what I want to show is that even before appearance of antibodies and ALT elevation, HCV RNA can be detected in the blood. Routine LFTs should be done, and jaundice is rare. And in end-stage liver disease, you can see jaundice. Hepatitis E virus, I told you A and E, they are spread via fecal-oral route, and the age group, they can be seen in young adults and older adults also they can be seen. Presentation is acute only. This is, earlier it was endemic in India and Middle East, but now it is crossing its borders. It is seen in Europe and other parts also. So it is no longer seen only in travelers. Hepatitis A is different from E in respect to pregnancy. Pregnant women, if they are infected with hepatitis E, they can develop acute liver failure. They'll have high mortality. Hepatitis E virus acute condition, it is usually self-limiting. Chronicity is rare. And IgM antibodies to HEB virus can be detected. Other forms are, there is a term called as non-A, non-B, non-C or non-A hepatitis. This is the term used to describe hepatitis that is thought to be due to a virus which is not hepatitis A or B or C or E. Other viruses which causes viral hepatitis are cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, herpes simplex virus, especially if the patient is immunocompromised. And other viruses are chickenpox, measles, and rubella. Thank you. Yes.
Hi friends, good afternoon. Yashkirrao from Pune. Greetings from East Godavari, the Wuhan of AP now currently. Okay, Madam has dealt extensively regarding all forms of hepatitis, acute hepatitis, and the agents that cause hepatitis. Several times when I was taking clinics for you, I was mentioning about two or three things. Hepatitis usually initially is very, very asymptomatic with very few symptoms. Some of the most important symptoms are anorexia, body pains, and a special distaste for smoking is described for hepatitis patients, and pain in the upper abdomen, especially in the pediatric age group, along with vomiting. So any patient who comes with anorexia, loss of appetite, not much of wasting, along with pain in the upper ab, along with another thing is vomiting. So when you have to suspect or you have to exclude a jaundice, especially in the lower age groups or younger age groups. And the other thing is, I was telling in the class, the color of the stool is almost reversed to the color of the urine, barring certain exceptions like achloric jaundice. The color of the stool will be becoming pale stools, and high colored or yellow colored urine. Usually once the patient complains of these things, you try to exclude a jaundice or a hepatitis. And as the patient is improving after a few weeks, whether with treatment or without treatment, there will be reversal of the color of the urine vis-a-vis the color of the stool, and as well as the improvement of appetite and general psychological well-being. This is some of the things that are associated with jaundice, which can be asymptomatic. Madam has told jaundice starting from A to E. And in these forms of jaundice, the peculiarity is type A and type E, they behave more or less similarly with certain exceptions. Madam mentioned very nicely about the Hep E, that especially when it is occurring in a pregnant lady, that carries a very, very high and poor prognosis, unlike Hep A. Please remember, Hep E reported in a pregnant lady may be of grave consequence. This is one thing. Otherwise, Hep A and Hep E, they behave more or less similarly. And BCD, they belong to, rather they behave in a separate subsets. The importance of this is, you can signify the patient's activity levels, and the risk that is associated with this. Fecal-oral route is common with A and E. The other thing is needle stick injuries, contaminated needles, the drug abusers, all these people can have BDE forms. The specialty of B is it's a piggyback. Per se, it will not happen, and it will be most often associated with a Hep B infection, and it rides on Hep B piggyback. So whenever there is a relapse of infection, that is, you have to sometimes, when the patient is having relapsing jaundice, apart from B, think of D if the risk factors are there. The specialty of this is A and E are having immunoprotection. We can give either active immunization or passive immunization. For other forms, there is no immunization as such. Hep C is also dangerous. It's more commonly diagnosed in needle stick injuries, contaminated surgeries, contaminated blood products, and sometimes very common in the dialysis centers. Hep C usually may be reported commonly amongst the people who are undergoing recurrent dialysis. Coming to the vaccination, only one thing I want to tell you is Hep A and Hep B are having immunizations, and Hep A, the vaccine available is known as Havrix. It can be given 2 shots 6 months apart, and the vaccination most of you might have been immunized is Hep B should be routinely immunized. It's 3 shots. And now in India and worldwide, the vaccinations are combined like this. It's a twin Rix, Havrix plus Hep B. So these two are combined, and they can give in as a combined shots, 3 injections. Usually after the 18th year, we give it because this is the ideal time, 6 months apart. Sometimes depending upon the situation, you have to give much earlier also. And coming to HbA1c, HbA1c is detected by Blumberg et al. He is an American doctor. He discovered this Australian antigen amongst Australian aborigines. That's why the surface antigen is named after HbA1c. Is an Australian antigen. It's very, very important marker for the diagnosis of hepatitis. And this was important in such a way, it paved the way for screening the patients, because Hep B is associated with the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma, just like the hepatitis C. So HbA1c is a detection of or reporting of HbA1c is a path-breaking event in medicine. The man who was associated with the discovery is Blumberg, an American doctor, and to honor him, as I always telling you, he was a Nobel laureate, and every year, July 28th was celebrated as World Hepatitis D. And coming to treatment, most of the times, jaundice is managed clinically. Very people from our areas, they go to native doctors, but is useless, and it is a whitewashing effect. There are several antiviral drugs available for certain forms of jaundice. Not all of them are routinely used. Supportive symptomatic care is important. Here you should know one thing. Whenever you are treating a patient, very often an outpatient patient, diet, so much attachment is given to, or emphasis is laid on diet. Not so much. It's basically why we observe this dietary restrictions are because of associated nausea and loss of appetite. These are the markers, or rather these are the burdens which prevent the patient from taking normal usual diets. But provided there are no contraindications, you can give his diet with certain limitations. But the thing is, you shouldn't give certain things. Like on the case sheet of any patient presenting with jaundice, right on the top of it, no sedatives, because most of the sedatives are metabolized through the liver, and they will be toxic, and they will be worsening the patient's condition. And no sedatives, number one, no antihistaminics. Antihistaminics, if they are metabolized through the liver, and because of the sedation part and the hepto excretion and hepatotoxicity, the first rider is no sedatives, no antihistaminics. Sometimes no diuretics we write. Anybody can put in the chartboard why we do not advise or advocate diuretics during jaundice. In a jaundice patient, diuretics should not be prescribed routinely. Alcohol, madam has already mentioned, and along with any hepatotoxic drugs like INH, rifampicin, and some other drugs. Cyclosporin or all the drugs, they can be toxic. And before giving all these drugs, it is always warranted, even routinely also, whenever you are advocating anti-epileptics and INH and Rifa, it is warranted on the part of the physician to assess the LFT. If the LFT is showing any abnormalities, you can withhold or modify the dose of the drug that is required for the treatment. So this is something about jaundice. Madam has done excellently. I'm just added a few points. Hope you will be benefited. This is basically a repeat for you. Go home, rather you are in a home, in your homes. Okay, read well about jaundice. Very simple, straightly dealt. And Davidson has given a clear, crisp picture regarding this. If you read it, it's more than enough for you. All forms of jaundice, starting from A to starting up to E. And here, one relevant part, as far as the SPM part is concerned, Dr. Mohan is sitting by my side out of just interest. I may ask you, once again, I may put it on the chat board. What is this Nazafkar disaster, or what is this Nazafkar epidemic? All of you or anybody whoever wants to answer, you can put it on the chat board. Nazafkar is a place close to Delhi. So you can analyze it and you can Google search and you can add your answer. Next week, you'll be probably knowing your answers. So have a wonderful day. Stay safe and keep your health nicely. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for a patient listening. Okay, bye. Thanks, madam. If you want to add, you can add. You can add. End of the session, you can announce. End of the session. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. This is the end of our session. Thank you for your patience.